Well, hello, and welcome back to the Lamppost Listener. My name is Daniel.
My name is Phil.
And this is a podcast where we journey chapter by chapter through C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia. This is chapter 9 of The Silver Chair, How They Discovered Something Worth Knowing.
This is a great title because it tells you a little bit what we're going to see, but has no actual content in it. And it's paired with a really good illustration. Do you have the same one I do?
I have all the illustrations.
Kind of like the nurse giant asleep.
What I get that later on in the chapter. There's another great illustration. There's only two in the chapter. There's one of Jill running away from the giants and kind of picking up her I guess dress, her robes as she's running, and then there's the one of the sleeping giant.
Okay.
Phil, is this the best chapter title we've had in Narnia so far?
No, but it's certainly unique.
What is the best chapter title then? Can you think off the top of your head?
The Duffel Puds Made Happy.
Get out of here.
Mind.
Are you serious? I was going to say that's my least favorite one.
Oh, really?
That's so funny.
We are holding auditions for another co-host.
That's so funny.
Someone who's sane.
That's the one you pulled. I love Sorcery and Sudden Vengeance.
Oh, nice.
That is my favorite chapter title we've done so far.
A little bit of alliteration goes a long way.
I do love me some alliteration. But we'll find some later on in my chapter description. So should we keep the show rolling?
Let's go. So what happened last episode first?
Last episode, Jill made, along with Eustace and Puddleglum, made a startling discovery regarding the second sign. And that discovery was that they missed both the second, and not only the second, but the third sign.
Oof.
Yeah, really not going well. So that is where we left off. And this is the summary for chapter 9. I sound like purred happily when I said that. I was announcing
this is the chapter in which we are going to read.
Yeah. All right, chapter 9. Hoping to escape from Harfang and visit the ruined city, our three companions place their hopes in Jill, who flatters and cajoles the giants that remain at the house. During lunch, Jill, Eustace, and Puddleglum are horrified to discover that they are being served venison from a talking beast. In addition to this revolting revelation, they also learn that the children, and perhaps Puddleglum, are to be served as dishes at the autumn feast. The three travelers leave the kitchen at once and head for the ruined city. They are chased down by the hunting party and barely escape into a small cave. Inside the cave, they grow anxious as they settle into their new surroundings. Their gloomy circumstances continue to plummet, literally, as they fall down a rocky slope. Bloodied, battered, and bruised, the three travelers are greeted by a mysterious voice.
First of all, excellent alliteration. Also a good summary.
This is a big change of scenery for us. We begin the chapter in a warm home, and we are now in a dark cave by the end of this chapter.
Right. And we find out they've been eating talking beasts.
So this has kind of been leading up, and I've wanted to talk about it, obviously, for the last few chapters. We can't because you are just staying with the pace of the book. Phil, at any point as we approach chapter 9, did you think the foreshadowing was going to be, they're going to eat them?
Yes.
Tell me more. You really did?
Yeah, it was the way Jill phrased the thing that she told.
Do you want to have us for the autumn feast?
Yeah, she said, she said that you would like to have us for the autumn feast.
Uh-huh.
And they all smile and laugh and stuff. That was the giveaway to me. Also, the fact that there are these kind of ominous overtones for everything.
Yeah, obviously.
Undertones. Anyway, something was ominous, and I picked up on it.
Yeah, something's been off for a while. We weren't quite sure what it was. You seem to have picked up on it, though, and that is that they are supposed to be cooked. Maybe Puddleglum, it's unclear if he was going to be eaten or not. He's in the recipe book, but it probably just depended on what the chef wanted.
Right, and if they could make it taste
There's
good.
no way he'd taste good.
No.
Look at him. That sounds awful, but I don't know. Have you ever had frog?
No, have you?
No, but
Have you ever had parrot?
No, why do you parrot?
Yeah, because it's a talking beast.
All right, let's move into the chapter. So the chapter begins with Jill really hamming it up for the giants. Yeah. There's going to be a lot of food puns in this episode. She really does for the giant. She is playing a game with them She is, what does Lewis say? She's prattling, she's giggling. She's actually, interestingly enough, we've talked a bit, not a lot, we have talked a little bit about Lewis and gender, and she is really playing into some traditional stereotypes of, a little girl might do. Kind of, she's even, at one point, she's tossing her curls around, and she is very, very talented here. When we had Sarah on in the last episode, we mentioned that this really was going to be a turning point, or at least we said it might be, and we continue to follow up on that. And that hypothesis seems to be true into chapter 9. She really is not the same fearful, crying girl we saw in the beginning of the last chapter, or the one who's just distracted by the idea of warmth at all.
Right. It's as if the jolt she got from seeing Aslan in that dream and seeing the signs and remembering it all was enough to kind of put her back on track.
Mm-hmm. Do we learn what Puddleglum and Eustace are doing during this time? Are they just watching her do these things? Are they,
They're trying.
They're trying. That's what I wanted to hear.
Right.
I want to picture that off to the side of this scene, Puddleglum is also trying to kind of wave his hair around and just look like he's being silly and frolicsome, as we heard in the last chapter, while Eustace is also trying. He's better at it. We learn, Lewis tells us, he's better at it, not as good as Jill, but much better than Puddleglum. Marshwiggles, not a talent.
Right.
And even, who's even worse than Marshwiggles are Respectabiggles. They're even way worse at doing this.
And Respectabiggle is just a intoxicated Marshwiggle.
Exactly, which is why he's not good at it.
Yeah, and we get a few more hints. They're dear little things of that age, said one giantess to another. It seems almost a pity. And there are these things that are building up to the reveal that we'll have, that we already know from the summary in a page or two, that they're going to be eaten. But first we find out that Puddleglum, Jill, and Eustace have eaten something they probably shouldn't.
Wait, can we go back though before we get to this?
Sure, chapter 8.
Yeah, chapter 8. Can we talk about chapter 8? No. In those conversations that the giants have, the ones who remain back from the hunt that they have with Jill and Eustace and Puddleglum, there's just like a weird relationship happening where they're all like, they're trying to hold back tears. They're upset. It's like Charlotte's Web or something, where Fern is upset, about it's if that book was Fern is upset that Wilbur's going to be eaten, but she still goes ahead and eats him anyway. That they all seem to acknowledge the fact that this is going to be sad to say goodbye to their new friends. Yet, like, we still got to have the feast, though, right?
Yeah, the feast must go on.
So sorry. Now back to another feast.
Sure. So they're enjoying some food. And then Puddleglum turns to them suddenly. His face is completely pale. And he says, "Don't need another bite." And they're not really sure how to react. But they understand that something's wrong. And then he reveals that he just overheard them saying, basically, that they're eating a talking stag.
The talking stag employs what is not a great argument for why you shouldn't eat me. The very cliche, hey, I wouldn't taste that good. You don't want me. I'm too tough. Don't want to eat me. Obviously, it doesn't work because they do eat him. And Lewis is very clear that this obviously affects each of them differently. Jill has she met, besides Glimfeather, has she met another talking beast?
I don't believe so.
Because Puddleglum would not be considered a talking beast.
No. Smart humanoid.
So she's only met one before. I mean, there were other owls at the Parliament of Owls. So she's just like, that's sorry. That's sad, right? She's
Her
upset.
reaction isn't as strong because she hasn't known as many.
Eustace, he thinks of Reepicheep, right? One of his good friend Reepicheep, and thinks about that and is like, he's horrified. And then Puddleglum is about to pass out because Lewis says he felt as you would feel if you had found out you had eaten a baby. That's a pretty intense line for Narnia here.
Yeah. I was a little bit afraid just because I sensed that maybe the giants were going to eat them, that maybe they were eating something worse than a talking beast.
Yeah. So, yikes. Like another Narnian or human. Yeah.
So...
Well, obviously, this is a very dark turn that the book has taken, or just this chapter has taken here. And just to lighten the mood for a minute, it does confirm to us our question earlier, which is that Puddleglum did know about the birds. Remember when they were on the Ensmore, we were asking, he's like, hey, these birds, and we joked that he probably knew and just, says whatever. But obviously at this point, we know that's not true. He does know. We don't know for sure, actually, that he knew. But
right. Because we have one other example of him saying something that we know is not true, which is he's like, I wasn't actually drunk, you guys.
So he's using that same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Puddleglum's speech here, he says, we've brought the anger of Aslan on us. He said, that's what comes from not attending to the signs. We're under a curse, I expect. And then this next part is so bad. I was prepping for this yesterday, and I almost sat up in my chair because it seems like something you should not say to children, especially if you're in kind of a role where you can help them. He says, if it was allowed, it would be the best thing we could do to take these knives and drive them into our own hearts.
This might be the darkest the series has gotten so far.
I think so.
Outside of Sorcery and Sudden Vengeance.
Right.
The turn that Puddleglum has taken, it really illustrates what a terrible grievance has been committed against the Talking Beast for this to happen. And I think what Puddleglum rightly recognizes is that they do share some fault in this. I think at first glance we might look at this scenario and say, well, they didn't know any better. But they did know better. Maybe not in this exact instance, but they did know better not to go to this house.
Right. They were warned.
Not only were they warned, they were specifically told to go do something else, and they disobeyed Aslan. Yeah. And, in the last episode, Sarah really walked us through that dream. She did such an incredible job kind of helping us make sense of Jill's dream. And we saw that Aslan is he's gentle, but he also disciplines Jill. And I think one thing we often forget as Christians is that we think that, the discipline has come or the correction has come, and so there's no more consequences for my mistakes. And that just isn't true. Like, there are consequences to the mistake that they've made, and Aslan has been, merciful towards them. He's been gracious in leading them back to showing them, here is where you're supposed to go. He showed them through Jill's dream, and now they do know what they're supposed to do. But there are consequences for them literally going off the path, going off the wrong way. And the consequence here is they have now eaten a talking beast.
Yeah.
And so while I do think Puddleglum is being a little too dramatic, I do think he is right to assume some responsibility for them. Right. Obviously not to the point of actually hurting themselves. We would obviously say that's not right. But he does acknowledge that, guys, we have a part to play here. We do hold some blame. So then, Phil, it's nap time.
Yeah, they sneak out of the hall. All the giants start falling asleep, except for one key giant,
which is
the cook.
The cook, and she's just kind of moving about. We learn that they do leave the scullery door open to let the cat in and out. Unclear. Is this a giant cat? We never see the cat, or is this a regular sized cat? It has to be a giant cat, right?
I imagine it's tiger-sized at least.
I really wish that the cat showed up at some point.
Yeah. Do you think it's a talking cat?
Have we? I don't think we've ever seen any talking cats. Yeah, Aslan is kind of a talking cat, but that's not. Don't tell him I said that. I would assume it is not a talking cat.
I think you're right.
Okay. So they do learn that they figure out how they're going to be able to get out, except that now the stupid giant won't fall asleep. And this is very, very frustrating.
Because there's pressure from both sides. They need her to fall asleep so they can leave, but it needs to be before the hunting party gets back. Yeah. And that could be any minute.
And they don't have exactly. They do not have all day. This needs to take place. And so she does start nodding off. But I have learned this as a new father. When someone just starts nodding off, they're not actually asleep yet. Yeah. There have been one too many times where I have been like, all right, baby's asleep. I can go do something else. I'm like, oh, no, it's not really asleep because I moved too fast or did this other thing. So they have wisely decided we need to wait just a little bit. And while they're waiting, that is when Jill comes across a cooking book. So let me go ahead and read the very first entry. It says, mallard. This delicious bird can be cooked in a variety of ways. Okay, pretty normal.
Perfectly fine.
Yep, that's fine. Have you ever had duck before?
I have.
That's pretty good.
I like duck.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
Yeah.
Now the next thing, hopefully you've not eaten, ever. Because the next thing says, man.
Oof.
This elegant little biped has long been valued as a delicacy. It forms a traditional part of the autumn feast and is served between the fish and the joint. Each man, and then it's cut off. I am dying to know what the next thing would have said.
Jill was not. She could not bear to read anymore.
And I probably would have felt the same way if I was actually in that situation.
Right.
What do you think it says, Phil? Each man
Tastes different.
yeah.
May cook at a different time. And
Yeah. So it made some just cooking instructions.
We weigh a lot. But I guess it's probably a giant pot of water.
Yeah, they're probably used to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I don't want to talk about this anymore.
It's a family show. This is obviously revolts Jill. And she can barely look back. And she goes and gets Eustace, and she gets Puddleglum, and then they see the next entry, Marshwiggle.
Oof.
It says this. It says, some authorities reject this animal altogether as unfit for giants' consumption because of its stringy consistency and muddy flavor. The flavor can, however, be greatly reduced if... Now, Phil, finish this sentence. What reduces the flavor of the Marshwiggle?
I can't imagine. They mixing it with man. I don't. This is a dark train of thought, man.
I won't make you finish it. I need to know, who are these authorities?
Right. They're probably big players in the giant cookbook.
This is like the James Beard of Narnia. It's like these are the food authorities, the Gordon Ramsay, if you will, right? It says, no, you got to do this too.
Or maybe it's actual authorities. Like maybe the giant police say, don't eat marshwiggles.
Yeah, men, fine. Ducks, fine. Marshwiggle, absolutely inappropriate. The authorities will come after you. Right. So we're joking here because we're trying to make light of a very dark part of this chapter, which is that they are going to be eaten. At least that's the plan.
But immediately after they're learning this, the cook falls asleep.
Oh, yeah.
And the way we find out she has fallen asleep, you think it might be something bad because all three looked back at the giantess. Her mouth was slightly open, and from her nose there came a sound. I thought that she was about to wake up or stop nodding off, or she found them.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're kind of in this intense tunnel vision mode reading the cookbook. But it turns out she's just snoring.
Yeah. So then the three travelers, they make tiptoe work to leave. And I want to read this paragraph here because Lewis does a great job of not letting us out of the tension yet. Even though the giant's asleep, they have left. You might think it's over. We've made it. But he doesn't do that to us. Let me read this. They were at the top of a rough little patch which ran steeply down. And thank heavens, on the right side of the castle, the city ruinous was in sight. In a few minutes, they were back on the broad, steep road which led down from the main gate of the castle. They were also in full view of every single window on that side. If it had been 1 or 2 or 5 windows, there'd be a reasonable chance that no one might be looking out. But there were nearer 50 than 5. They now realized, too, that the road on which they were, and indeed all the ground between them and the city ruinous, didn't offer as much cover as would hide a fox. It was all coarse grass and pebbles and flat stones. To make matters worse, they were now in the clothes that the giants had provided for them last night, except Puddleglum, whom nothing would fit. Jill wore a vivid green robe, rather too long for her, and over that a scarlet mantle fringed with white fur. Scrub had scarlet stockings, blue tunic, and a cloak, a gold-hilted sword, and a feathered bonnet. Go ahead and read it.
First of all, the bonnet part is just a wonderful addition.
Sure.
They gave him that, right?
Yep.
He's still wearing it.
And then what were you laughing at?
That's the part that stood out. But the nice bits of color line that Puddleglum mutters next is also pretty good.
Yeah. This is not good.
And he says the worst archer in the world couldn't miss either of you if you were in range.
What about those giants throwing stones?
Yeah.
Think they can still miss?
No, they can't hit anything. They're the stormtroopers of Narnia.
Yeah, that has been made clear to us. Also, this is, you kind of just imagine it as you see them, and then the picture kind of zooms out as you realize, oh, they've gotten away. And then we zoom out and we go, oh, no. They have a long way to go, and there's about 50 windows that can see them, and they're in super bright clothes.
Yeah. So
they are not out of the woods yet. On top of all this, they're not wearing warm clothes either, and Jill is freezing. Remember, it just was snowing yesterday.
Right. And even though the rain washed it away, it doesn't mean it warmed up any.
No, not. It must have warmed up a little bit because it turned the snow to water, but not enough that it's, okay, let's go sunbathing right now.
Right.
So it starts off in a tense way, but it's okay so far. They're just kind of walking calmly, like maybe people just think we're out for a stroll towards that ruined city over there. But then things take a turn for the worse.
They do, because the hunting party is coming back. And we know that because of the horn. Do they blast the horn all the way home so that people know they're coming?
Yeah, you got to get dinner ready and everything.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's tea time. We're not sure. They just ate lunch, so probably tea time is next.
Yeah.
Which now we know, 4 o'clock-ish.
4 o'clock.
Pretty quickly, they are seen, and it is a mad dash towards the ruins. Phil, what is going through Jill and Eustace's mind as this is happening?
Well, the downside is they're not wearing their track gear.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have cleats.
They had
with spikes in
jumpsuits
them.
when they were coming up through
Right.
the
They were
Atmos.
fine then.
They don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
Now they're in these long clothes.
And everything's a little too big, right?
It seems like
Which
it,
is
absolutely.
understandable. But it is very difficult to run in.
Doing any kind of physical activity in clothes that are too big is the worst thing. As I can speak from someone who hit puberty a little too late to enjoy sports in middle school, it's the worst feeling.
Yeah.
As they approach the ruined city, they see this we get this mostly from Jill's perspective. They see this small entry to a cave or to the underground. We even get the image that as Puddleglum is making his way inside, he looks kind of like a spider with his long legs hanging out. Lewis, I mean, this is terrifying. He says you have to fling yourself flat on your face to crawl in, and even then you couldn't do that quick because of how small this hole is. I don't like this.
Me either. This seems not quite as bad as being eaten, but it does not seem easy.
No, especially
to do
when
what
there's
they're doing.
There's dogs on your heels,
right,
trying to get in. I'm going to be honest, this does not seem like an easy entrance. Puddleglum last chapter said, hey, maybe when we get down to the under me, we'll see some kind of, relatively easy entrance to whatever lies beneath this city. This seems like a pretty difficult thing to, I mean, it probably is some kind of divine providence or Aslan that's helping them being able to see this thing, because it just seems like a random crevice that's there.
Yeah. But it works out. They're glad that it's there.
Yes, because it's so small, right? Because it's so small, they're able to quickly fill that hole back up to keep the dogs from getting inside. As we established last chapter, the dogs are regular dog-sized. They're not giant dogs. So they could maybe have fit into this and come after them. Yeah. But in saving themselves for this moment, they have now essentially locked themselves inside of this cave.
Right. And we come to a line that I thought was going to finally provide some clarity.
What line was that, Phil?
Because Puddleglum's voice comes from the darkness, and he says, "Further in, quick."
Does he say farther in or further in?
He says further in my edition.
No, he doesn't. Are you serious? Mine, he says farther in. Farther.
Well,
another discovery on the Lamppost Listener.
Let's spend 30 minutes on that.
Yeah. So
I really thought this was going to explain.
And
why
you're sure
everyone
it's not
keeps signing their emails further in.
They're just all thinking about that time that they all went in the cave.
That's right.
You think that's it?
Don't think it's really that special, but that's their thing. No, I'm gonna start sending all our emails that we send out as further in, quick. And then Jill, this kind of pulled me back to reality, or the reality of the book. She says, "Let's all hold hands."
That is me. If we get into a dark space, I'm like, everybody, let's hold hands. I want to know where everybody is. I don't trust any of y'all. Also, I'm scared. Phil, let's take a little sidebar here. Have you ever been in a cave before?
Yes.
What kind of cave have you been
in? Dark.
No, like where have you been in a cave before?
I think probably on some museum trip. We did a lot of mountain trips as a kid.
Okay.
So, some historical site where you get to go in a cave a little bit.
Because
I think the museum near my house growing up had a cave that you could go into.
They got caves in North Carolina like that you can go visit?
I think so.
No, I didn't. I mean, I'm sure they do.
I definitely remember being in a cave multiple times.
Okay.
Whether or not it was fabricated, that's the part I'm not sure about. Maybe the aquarium was fake, but it felt real.
I was thinking about this. I've been to 2 big caves before. I've been to Mammoth Cave National Park in Kentucky.
Whoa.
And Luray Caverns in Virginia.
Okay.
And have you ever? It sounds like you've not been to Mammoth Cave. That's the kind of one I wanted to talk about.
No.
So my mom lived. I don't think I've ever talked about this on the show before, but my grandfather was a national park ranger, and so my mother was born in Glacier National Park in Montana, and then pretty much until she was in college, they moved like every 3 years to a different national park. So my mom grew up in national parks, which is funny because I joke about kind of being more of an indoor person, but actually I have done a lot of traveling to different national parks and stuff, and I love doing it. And she lived for a while in Mammoth Cave, and we went.
She lived in Mammoth Cave?
Not in the cave itself, but she lived in the park, or she might have lived like right outside of it. But my granddad, her father, worked there. And we got to go, back when I was like in high school, we traveled to Mammoth Cave, and dude, this cave was huge. Like, I mean, it's called Mammoth Cave. Yeah. And we went on like a tour. There's like a 3-hour tour where we just walked all throughout the cave. And it's a little unnerving, right? You go down these like giant steps that not actually giant steps, but you go down this not like the ones in the book.
We've encountered giant steps.
You go down these steps, and you just keep going down further and further. And I remember thinking, like, why is this not an escalator? And then also, like, this is really far down. And then we got to go, there's like a really great, kind of like this great room inside, and we walked all through the cave. And it's all lit up. They have electricity and stuff. But I remember the most frightening thing. I mean, it was like a safe thing. It wasn't actually scary. But the most unnerving thing about being in the cave and spending like hours inside of it with a park ranger, like a tour guide, was I had no idea where we were. Every time we took a left or a right, or we moved just down a passage, I was like, I have no, like if I got lost, I would never find my way out. And there were other parts that were kind of freaky. There's this one part we had to literally like get down. You had to crawl a little bit. We went on this we were all young, so we went down on this more like adventurous passage with the tour guide, and you had to like crouch down a couple parts to get through different parts. Oh. And that was freaky. But it was the lack of direction.
Yeah, you have no way to orient yourself.
And again, this was with a tour guide, my family, and there was electricity inside the cave. It's not a fire, like actual lights. I cannot imagine the fear going through Jill and Eustace's, and probably Puddleglum's as well too. He's a little bit older. Yeah. But the fear on these children's minds as they realize we have no idea where we are. It is pitch black. What comes next?
Yeah, and the only exit that we know of has dogs who want to eat us, who are owned by giants who want to eat us.
I was thinking about this in relation to real life application, especially with our faith. And I wonder if you can relate to this, Phil. There have been times where I have, let's say, come to my senses, just like Jill has, the undeception we talked about in the last chapter. She realizes, oh man, we've really been following the wrong things. I've been chasing after this thing, and there's now consequences, and I've been disciplined, and now I need to do the right thing. I need to follow Christ. And then you start doing it, and then like pretty quickly, like, wait, no, this is bad too, right? You're like, it doesn't work out perfectly. You like tell yourself, like, oh, like now that I'm, following this or that thing, right now that I'm doing what God has asked of me, things are going to be perfect. And then they aren't. And so then you go back. It's this like cyclical thing where we keep being, tempted back to sin, even though we've been called to righteousness. And I'm sure that Jill and Eustace are thinking the same thing. Like, wait a second. It's like out of the frying pan and into the fire. We're not going to be eaten now, but now we're stuck in the
Still
dark. Like,
bad.
Aslan, what are you doing
Yeah.
right here? I can definitely relate. I'm sure there's a lot of frustration on their minds.
Right. We don't get a ton of resolution at the end of the chapter either.
Yeah, not at all. And in fact, as I mentioned in the summary, things get worse.
Yeah.
So first they're just here. Well, you talk about it.
Well, they start sliding down at a pretty rapid speed, and it seems like they go for quite a while. We find out in a few paragraphs it feels like they slid for a mile.
Mm-hmm.
It must be a mile further down than where they were before. And then a voice that is definitely not Aslan, if that's clarified before we even hear what they say. A voice comes out of the darkness.
Yeah.
And it says, "What make you here, creatures of the overworld?"
Ooh, ominous.
Yeah. So if he's calling them creatures of the overworld, he must be a creature of the underworld.
Yeah.
And that is terrifying.
Before we wrap up the chapter, I want to talk about this descent further into darkness and further underground. As Jill falls down, after she gets up from her fall, she is a mass of bruises and she has wet, sticky stuff on her face that appears to be blood. As I was reading this, I was taken aback by the verisimilitude of this scene. I don't remember. Well, actually, I can't think of one now that I say that. It has been rare that we see blood in Narnia. The one thing I can think of is Peter and Malgrim in chapter 12.
Clean your sword.
And in general, I know this isn't Tolkien, this isn't that kind of level of high fantasy, but Narnia still, I would put in the high fantasy realm of, it's not gritty, obviously.
Right.
We're not seeing a lot of, it still has this ethereal nature to it. It is very otherworldly. And so we're not, and aside from a couple of, fourth wall breaks to the audience, we don't really, it does feel higher than lower fantasy, right? And so I was thinking, like, what is Lewis getting at here as he includes this wet? He doesn't not just blood appears, but wet, sticky. It's described. And as I drew connections between this and chapter 12 of Wardrobe, I thought about what an important scene that is for Peter, right? As he fights Malgrim, it's an important growth moment for his character. And so this, in a similar way, kind of caps off what has been an important growth for Jill as a character. Over the last chapter or so, she has realized the mistakes that she has made, and she has forged forth, even when she's worried, even when she's scared, even when she's not sure what's going to happen, to follow what Aslan has called her to do. In the same way that Peter, after defeating Malgrim, has blood on his sword, he has grown and he is ready to move into what Aslan has called him to do. But also at the same time, the inclusion of the description of blood, actually, in my opinion, is the point of the story so far that shows us how far we have to go to make things better.
Yeah, we're seeing that a lot of sacrifice is required.
Mm-hmm.
And that you don't necessarily get through this without scratches.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, more than scratches in this case.
There is a lot of unknown coming in the next few chapters. We're now here. I mean, this is where our characters are. They're in a dark someplace, maybe a mile underground. So far underground that it's warm, whatever that means, right? And then they hear a voice we've never heard before.
Right.
Or just a voice. We don't know, but it's not identified here in this chapter.
One of the things that stands out to me here is that this is completely different than the other three books, which is, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
It's so helpful because it keeps it exciting, and it, in a way, it kind of mimics the situations that we face, where we kind of know what things are going to be like, but we're not guaranteed those things. And then suddenly something completely different happens.
Well, Phil, before we go to listener feedback, I want to introduce a new little segment here. You have no idea this is coming. I want to call it Phil's Prediction. I love my alliteration. But
that's not.
I mean, technically it is.
It's alliteration if it's the same letter, but even if it's not the same sound?
Even if it's not the same sound, it still technically counts. But
learning something every day.
And in this new segment, we won't do it every time, but especially when we have cliffhangers like this, I would love for you to tell us what is going to happen next. So we hear this voice, and here's my main question. Who do you think this is?
I think it's the Undertaker from The Incredibles.
I've not seen it.
You have not seen The Incredibles?
I might have seen like as a little kid, or as like a child, but no. There's like a guy with a cape. I know that. Like that's part of pop culture. Oh, I don't get it. Sorry. This is not fun for anyone else involved.
I think someone's gonna get that reference.
Okay. It's like Fantastic Four, right? They're just like the Fantastic Four.
Some of the things that you say out of ignorance.
Isn't it just like a ripoff of the Fantastic Four? Is it good?
It's so good.
It's
one of the best Pixar movies.
No, that's not. WALL-E's the best Pixar movie.
It is one
actually,
of the
and
best.
Toy Story 3.
Toy Story 3 is pretty good. I'll give you that.
Every Toy Story movie is just incredible.
Have you seen 4?
Yeah, it was great.
So you've seen Toy Story 4, but you haven't seen The Incredibles.
Yeah, but I like the characters. I like the characters in Toy Story a lot more than I mean Fantastic Four. They're even boring in the Marvel universe.
It's not the Fantastic Four. I don't know. The thought of the underworld makes me think of either like a devil type character, like a Satan.
Okay.
But they're in a bad situation, and I would hope that this is someone who's going to get them out. So maybe we'll get a play on that where they're in the underworld, but they're not satanic. So my hope is that it's someone who's going to be helpful, but at first they're afraid because they're in the underworld.
Okay, so it's going to be scary at first, and then it will turn good.
Right.
This person. What's this person's name? Give him a name.
Molitar.
This is incredible.
Sure, Molitar the Incredible.
Is that one of the characters from the movie?
No.
Oh, that's not one of the Incredibles. Or wait, are their last name Incredible?
No.
Okay.
The last name is Parr.
Really?
Yeah.
That's the most boring last name.
Bob and Helen Parr. It's because those are their covers, man.
Oh, okay.
They're superheroes.
At least the Fantastic Four are the Richards, right? Isn't their last name? They're not all
Mr. Fantastic.
No, but I think it's Reed Richards is his real name, and then Susan, and then Johnny, and then
also known as Captain America.
Only in some universes. Maybe that'll be like the new multi-universe that Marvel's doing. They're gonna have Captain America also somehow be.
Now that Chris Evans has finished as Captain America, he can go back and play Fantastic.
All right, so that is your prediction. Moltar the Incredible. He's going to, in all seriousness, this character be scary at first, but turn out to be a helpful guide.
Right.
All right.
Get him out of there.
Well, next time, this isn't going to help you in my description here. In our next episode, Chapter 12, Jill, Eustace, and Puddleglum are going to travel through the darkness.
Oh.
With Moltar the Incredible.
What if I'm right, though?
What if you were right? Wow, that'd be incredible. I gotta stop using the word incredible. All right. Well, before we go, it is time for our listener feedback. And the first thing that we have is a voicemail from Julie.
Hey, guys. My name's Julie. I was actually catching up on some episodes I missed, and I was listening to the end of Prince Caspian last night and heard Daniel mention that it was his birthday on October 2nd. So since that's today, I just wanted to call and wish Daniel a happy birthday. Thanks for all you do, guys. I love your podcast. Have a great day.
Oh, that was fun.
So obviously, it's not October the 2nd right now.
Yeah.
That is a little silly, but I wanted to actually say thank you personally to Julie. This is kind of a silly thing, but I think Phil, you and I have already talked about this, but this past year, I went and deactivated my Facebook and stuff. It just was something I've been wanting to do for a while. And because of that, Anna and I were talking a couple of weeks leading up to my birthday. I was like, nobody knows anyone's birthday anymore. And I was realizing I didn't know a ton of people's birthdays because I just would go to Facebook and find them there. And so Anna was asking, what are you looking forward to for your birthday? And I was saying a couple of stuff. She's like, And I was like, you know what's going to be kind of a bummer is one of the things I think that we all enjoy on our birthdays. People reach out to us. I feel like a lot of times I hear from a couple of people that I haven't heard from in a while, but it's all because we just see it on social media, right? Well, that didn't happen as much this year, obviously, because people can't see it on the internet. And so as the day was wrapping up, and it was a great day. I had a lot of fun. And I was telling Anna, I was like, but the one thing, as it's kind of a bummer, there's a couple people that I usually hear from that, how would they know? I legitimately wasn't upset about it or anything. Yeah. And right then I got a notification from the voicemail. That's awesome. I thought that was so cool. It was just a really fun thing. That was really thoughtful of Julie. Phil, you never shared your birthday. When is your birthday?
It is the 24th of September.
24th. I think we've talked about this on the dancing lawn before. I think recently actually we did.
Yeah.
That you were just about a week apart in birthdays.
A week and a day.
But I'm a year older technically.
No,
that's not true. Phil is older.
Right.
So Julie, I just wanted to say that was really kind and thoughtful of you. And the only other thing I was thinking of as you said this, in my mind, when our episodes are released, that's when everyone listens to them. I know that's not true, but it's weird for me to think about the fact that people are listening to stuff we recorded years ago at this point.
And it makes me so grateful that we re-recorded the first 3 that we did.
Oh, yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, doing a podcast is not the most difficult thing in the world, but there is a certain amount of getting used to talking into a microphone. And I'm not saying I sound super great now, but it sounded way worse when we did those first 3. And our content wasn't very good. We weren't sure what we were saying. And we got about 2 episodes in.
No, I think we did all 3.
No, you had edited them, and I got about 2 episodes in, and then you messaged me. You said, feedback we're getting is we should try again.
Yeah.
And we did, and I'm so glad.
Yeah, we had like a circle of, I think, 5 or 6 friends we were sending stuff to before we released anything. Yeah, the council. And they were like, it's not good.
Yeah.
So we went back and recorded all 3 of those. I actually still have I don't know what happened to the second and third one. They were erased from the archive memory.
Right. Yeah. It's impossible.
But the first one still exists. I do have it. Maybe we'll make it like some kind of reward on Patreon one day or something. Like if you guys ever wanted for hitting enough patrons,
it's a punishment.
The reward is you can listen to a really.
If we don't get enough people supporting us, we're gonna release these.
We're gonna be like the show doesn't go on. We're only gonna repost our terrible first episode. By the way, the show back then. Do you remember the name we originally called it?
Dances with Wolves?
No, it was called Into the Wardrobe.
Into the Wardrobe, that's right.
And then we realized that David Downing had a book named that. There was like already 2 websites about Narnia.
Yeah, because it became difficult to buy any domain name or anything.
Yeah, so not that we have one.
Yeah.
But so we decided to go with the Lamppost Listener, which was your brainchild, and it's a great name.
Yeah.
So, but again, Julie, thank you so much for reaching out. That really made my day there on my birthday. So thanks. Yeah. All right, Phil, you got an email?
I do. This email is from Neil. Neil says, I've listened to your podcast for the last couple of weeks and enjoy your insights and wanted to add some insights on the newest chapter, The Sailing of the King. While I'd enjoy it if you'd discuss the meeting of Glimweather and Trumpkin, the old dwarf, in your next podcast, I want to share some insight regarding Jill and Eustace messing up the first sign. While we find out later that the not heeding the sign provided to hinder their progress in a way, it wasn't the end of their adventure. In some ways, they are commandments that we sometimes fail at keeping, but it only prevents our ability to keep other commandments. Looking at the Sermon on the Mount, for example, Matthew 5, a person that avoids getting angry with his brother or lust after a woman makes it easier for the person in keeping the commandments not to kill or commit adultery. Not because the commandments seem easier, but because of the discipline instilled that helps them regulate or recognize when they approach breaking themselves to the commandments. Another note that might be of interest is that in the chapter, when Eustace and Jill realize they messed up the signs, their immediate response is the blaming game. Jill says it's Eustace's fault for not talking to Caspian. Eustace argues that it's Jill's fault for his falling off the cliff. In some ways, it's similar to how Adam and Eve were approached in the Garden of Eden. God asked, "Who told you that you were naked? Did you eat the forbidden fruit?" In response, Adam explained that Eve gave him the fruit. When God asked her about the fruit, she explained that the serpent beguiled her. In each case, they blamed someone else for what they did. In some ways, when we are ashamed to face our mistakes or recognize what we did as wrong, We take on their attitude in saying, it's not my fault for this mess, it was the circumstances, or someone else's fault. In contrast, God not only wants us to recognize when we mess up, He wants to help us understand why the mess is bad, and helps us maintain cleanliness, so we feel comfortable in His presence. I could go on, but I don't want to go overboard with it. As to the two questions y'all ask, I'm a Texan, I'm allowed to say y'all. I was practically raised with the Chronicles of Narnia, though I haven't delved into his other work. As to which book is my favorite, I would say after The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, it would be The Horse and His Boy. My reasons for this is because we get a sense of Aslan's presence in the young boy's life. Plus, I've done some horseback riding in the past, and I attest that the advice given about horseback riding in the first chapter is sound. Hope to hear more from y'all soon. Hope you stay safe in these uncertain times. Fellow son of Adam, Neil Daniels. Well, thanks, Neil.
Yeah,
That's really fun.
That is some great points that Neil brings up. And I think the biggest takeaway from everything that he said is that it sounds like chapter 1 of The Horse and His Boy is a horseback riding instruction manual. Is that what you took away from this?
That's my understanding, and I'm looking forward
that's
to
what
it
I'm
even
hearing.
more now in a weird way.
No. I love the connection between Jill and Eustace figuring out that they have messed up these signs and thinking about to Genesis chapter 3 when Adam and Eve are questioned by God, and Adam's first thing to do is be like, she did it.
Yeah.
Such an act of immaturity by both Adam and Eve, and then obviously Jill and Eustace.
Right.
His other point about God wanting to not just have us recognize we made mistakes, but helping us understand why those mistakes are bad. Help us. I think he says maintain cleanliness. Isn't that what you just read? I think you said maintain cleanliness.
That is right.
That really reminds me of these past 2 chapters where we see that Jill has really come to the conclusion that she messed up through their trip to Harfang. And again, it's not about just realizing she messed up. It's about making the choice to now make things right. And we see that here in these last few chapters, which is why this is a great email for chapter 9 here.
Right. Yeah. Excellent points.
And so thanks again, Neil, for reaching out. We really do appreciate that. And again, one more person telling us we should be excited for Horse and His Boy.
Yeah. The hype is building, and I'm ready.
All right. Well, Phil, do you want to close us out here?
Sure. This episode is made possible by our patrons over at patreon.com. If you'd like to support the show, you too can listen to a bonus episode each month, along with other rewards. Special thanks goes to Elias Dean, Hannah Anderson, John Marr, Emily Margaret, and Ryan Smith for supporting us at our top tiers. You can follow us into Narnia on our Twitter or Facebook pages. You can also leave us feedback at thenarniapodcast@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at 406-646-6733. We'd also appreciate a review on Apple Podcasts, as it helps other listeners find the show and join in on our read-throughs. And you can make sure that you're subscribed so that you can find us in your favorite podcast app every other Wednesday. Thank you for coming along on this journey, and we will be back next time with Chapter 10.